Dynasties? They call it Dynasties? Is that so? On a historical level, at that time the Mycenaeans and Hittites were wiped out. Egypt miraculously survived, but with so many problems that it practically never returned to its best, and you call that dynasties? Dynasties of what, of the dead? It's the long-awaited update for vampire counts. Ah, well then. Houston, we have a problem, and you will say, yet another one. Yes, but as it is part of our considerations, and we would really like to hear your opinion on it too, you will have to wait for the final part of this video. In the meantime, let's talk about Pharaoh, the Dynasties expansion that will arrive rather more surprisingly than we were told about 2 months ago. A very vague communication, but with the words "by the end of the year," they had left interpretations that it would arrive at least after September. In our opinion, but we will come back to this in a moment, Creative Assembly again left us puzzled at the level of communication. Saying first by the end of the year and then announcing it for the 25th of July, well, I don't know about you, but to us it leaves a sense of work cut short, rushed. But we talk about this and more thanks to some information we received, and which we start talking about as we get into the meat of this video. Are you ready? Pharaoh, released on the 29th of September, 2023, certainly didn't get a great reception from the public, bad sales, and even worse reactions from the community. So we wanted to know what the atmosphere was like inside during this expansion, and learned that the team worked in a very stressful and rushed environment, as based on what we heard, although the impression was that Creative Assembly had given the team a bit more freedom, the time constraints on Sophia's team severely limited the possibilities of improving Pharaoh and the realization of this expansion. On which it must be said and acknowledged from what we have been told, that the Sophia team read and analyzed feedback from the community and that some of it was more or less used for Dynasties. A job from what we have heard the team had as a time frame for release between July and August maximum, and here we come back to what we were saying before, why such an earlier announcement? We can imagine that Creative Assembly wanted to take precautions by saying by the end of the year so as not to have to announce a delay in case they weren't ready between July and August. So why, then, if we knew from the inside that Dynasties needed more time, not wait any longer? We have an idea, let us know yours. In our opinion, since Sophia will have to take care of the next DLC for Warhammer 3, in the meantime they have realized between themselves and Horsham how much work and how much Sophia has to learn to realize them. After all, starting to work on a project like Warhammer when until recently you knew nothing about it, could have led to this choice. Apart from that, however, part of the team will continue to work on Dynasties to fix bugs and balancing issues. Maybe some patches will come in the future. As we begin to delve into the game, it was hoped that certain aspects would be revised, corrected, in short, that Pharaoh's sore points would be fixed, but instead, starting with the resources, nothing changes. Rest assured, you will always find a faction willing to trade with you that resource you so desperately lack. As it won't change the most idiotic mechanic I think I've ever seen on a Total War. You can continue to recruit 20 full-stack armies but still suffer the lack of a worker to construct your buildings. Genius. Thinking of a population system like in Divide et Impera or other mods apparently for Creative Assembly continues to be too complicated. The outposts themselves have not undergone any improvement. You will not be able to decide where to build them, but only at predetermined points, and they will remain a trivial bonus system. Same flat mechanics as the Royal Court system with one minor adjustment. To hold certain positions, you will have to own certain regions. We come to one of the main problems with Pharaoh, at least in our view. In Pharaoh, we saw more work done in characterizing the Egyptian culture, less work was done on the others. And the Egyptian, Canaanite, Hittite, and Sea peoples' cultures in the end, from the point of immersion of the player, are not so differentiated to make a gaming experience in which you realize that you are playing with the Hittites and no longer with the Egyptians. Differences? Only minimal visual ones, and the legacy system. Another criticism we've often raised is that Pharaoh takes over the Warhammer system. You play the character, who is equipped with a whole range of items to upgrade him or her. It's the character we're going to play and not the faction as it's always been on the historians. In Dynasties this does not change, the character remains at the center. A choice that, if made for a game that develops in a limited time span, we could also accept, but in this expansion, which is called Dynasties, with characters who die, get married, give birth to heirs, well, we would have preferred a different setting. That's on the campaign side as far as we've been able to learn. It remains to be seen on the battle side, which we want to preface by saying that when we received this information, it was still being worked on, so there may be some changes from when it will be released. Let's start with a great creative assembly classic of recent games. Even in Dynasties you can forget about naval battles, and as in the last titles including Pharaoh itself, suddenly the island of Atlantis appears, on which your armies will clash. Let's face it, historically it fits, ships weren't made for battles back then and in practice we have no record of them. Rather than the usual little island appearing, however, we would have preferred it if the fleets, for whatever reason, for example on the open sea, were unable to sight each other and so each continued on their own course. We will also return to this later. Chariots at the time a terrible and terrifying weapon in the open field. In Pharaoh they certainly did not live up to their reputation, and unfortunately in Dynasties this very important aspect has not been corrected and will therefore remain a sore point on which we still expect strong criticism from the community. As always on the subject of chariots, their pathfinding has not been improved. They will therefore remain a blunt weapon, a weapon that was supposed to be the most terrible for the time. It will remain, barring surprises, an unfinished business. Turning to infantry, once again the news is not good. Another aspect that drew strong criticism has not been corrected. The problem of unit massing remains, and so in Dynasties we will once again see units that interpenetrate. Cavalry units are the big news. How will they perform in battle? At the time of when we received this information, battles are still being worked on, so we cannot give you a definite answer. However, from what we have heard, they are in danger of being at the release of overpowered units if there are no adjustments. We can, however, tell you that the Assyrians and Cimmerians will be recruitable as faction units and recruitable as native units in Mesopotamia and Zagros. We do end, however, with at least some good news. The new Dynasties battle maps will be larger in size, while they are not increasing the size of the battle maps, which are already present in Pharaoh. A decision we liked. Total War needs bigger maps combined with more work, maps that present tactical strategic choices on how to deploy units at the start and points to take to control the battlefield. Let's hope that Creative Assembly will go further down this road. So a game that basically keeps Pharaoh's problems unchanged, a flat game whereas in Pharaoh what will be important in the campaign will be having resources and manpower and basically ignoring everything else. Dynasties will be free on release for those who already own it, but if you haven't bought Pharaoh yet, our advice is, wait. Wait for the reviews from content creators you trust, wait for the comments on Steam. Don't be convinced by the marketing policy they are making. After that you can decide, after you've made up your mind, whether to buy it or not, and maybe unlike our opinion you might even like it. After all, it is only fair that everyone has their own tastes and ideas. As we said, however, in the opening Houston, we have a problem, or maybe even more, of a new historical title. There is no trace on the horizon. After all, the impression is that Creative Assembly is going towards recall titles, and from the economic point of view is a choice that we can also understand. A choice aimed at economic return and able to expand the Total War brand, with titles like Warhammer 40,000 or Star Wars able to attract more attention and sales than a historical title. A choice that we understand, but on which, should this be the case, we express our disappointment. Problems that could also exist in the event that a historical title arrived if this was the way they wanted to make it. Troy, Pharaoh, Dynasties, titles made with little effort, few resources, few funds available. Titles made in a short time, with few truly innovative choices, but which should also be functional and well realized to increase the experience and quality of the game. Let us return to the aspect of naval battles, which have been missing since Attila. A choice that allows Creative Assembly to save work, time and money, but the continuous choice to make the island that isn't there appear out of nowhere, as far as we're concerned, has really started to annoy, even though we perfectly agree that this historical period doesn't lend itself to naval battles. Imagine if they made an Empire 2 and the naval clashes weren't there and it also appeared in Empire 2, the Neverland. What would your reaction be? There's no sign of a historical one on the horizon, but if it were to be made the way Troy and Pharaoh were made, well, maybe it's better that it's not there and remains a dream for fans. Let us know in the comments what you think. Thanks everyone for watching this video. Leave a like if you liked it. Bye and see you next time.